Okay, so likes of Pepe are being written off after just 2 months. Maybe, just maybe it's a little harsh. Let's take a look at one player from every Premier League club who was written off by the fans after a slow start, only to go out and prove every single one of them wrong. Some of them in embarrassing fashion. Arsenal, Thierry Henry. Yeah, it's hard to think there was ever a time when Arsenal fans didn't have a tug in the shower to memories of Thierry Henry, but yeah, back when they first signed him from Juventus for 11 million quid in August 1999, the fans were ready to dump him in the goddamn bin. A winger at Juventus, it took Henry 8 games to score a single goal for Arsenal. Considering half the fan base are currently declaring Pepe to be worse than a sloppy cowpat, you can imagine what they thought of Henry. It's fair to say they were fairly wrong. Aston Villa, Alan Hutton. His debut season at Aston Villa under Alex McLeish back in the 11-12 season was a cataclysmic disaster, and so he was exiled from the first team for 2 goddamn years. He finally returned in 2014 and was then a first team fixture for the next half decade. Tell someone back in 2013, when Hutton was viewed as nothing more than a bald waste of time, that he'd go on to make 185 appearances and score one of the greatest derby goals of all time, yet they think you were mental. Bournemouth, Josh King. I'm gonna go for Josh King. Let's be honest, he struggled in the club's debut top flight season after arriving from Blackburn. 6 league goals all season was pretty poor. He followed it up with 16 the following season, 9 the year after, and 12 last year. He nearly has 50 goals for the club now. Nearly 5 times what he managed in the entire 6 years of his career prior to that Bournemouth move. Brighton, Shane Duffy. Okay, to be fair, Shane Duffy didn't get off to a bad start at Brighton or anything like that, but the fans were worried when he was drafted in from Blackburn in August 2016 for a club record £4 million. I mean, why wouldn't you be? The season was only 2 weeks old, and the Irish centre-half had already scored 3 own goals and been sent off by Blackburn. Let's not forget, he'd also been sent off at Euro 2016 that same summer. Clearly, Brighton were worried that this new marquee signing had all the defensive abilities of a burst condom. Again, following promotion and successive top 5 finishes, they were wrong. Burnley, Danny Ings. It's not that Burnley fans wrote off Danny Ings, it's more that they just didn't expect him to turn out so well. A £1 million arrival from Bournemouth in 2011, he certainly played like one. 6 league goals in his first 50 games for the club. How in that mouse's eyelash were they ever going to go anywhere with him up front? 26 goals later, Ings sees them promoted, nets 11 in the top flight, and secures a move to Liverpool. Not bad. Chelsea, Tammy Abraham. Yeah, I know, alright, technically this man isn't a new signing, having come through the ranks as youth, but lads, you only have to go back 6 weeks to see the abuse he was receiving after a shaky first couple of games, including a 4-0 demolition job at Old Trafford and a botched penalty in the Super Cup.
Tammy Abraham is terrible. At this point, I'd rather play Alonso up front. Tammy Abraham, get out of this club, you are Tammy Abraham is awful. Oh my word, Tammy Abraham is awful. Tammy Abraham is honestly awful. Championship Welbeck.
I didn't know, lads. Turns out the random lads stuck in their mother's basement on the internet aren't right about everything. Crystal Palace, Glenn Murray. When Glenn Murray first wound up at Crystal Palace back in May 2011, he needed some time to win the fans over. After all, it didn't help he was arriving from their most hated rivals. Yes, there were highlights in his debut season, like an extra time winner at Old Trafford in the League Cup, but other than that, it wasn't great. He scored 6 goals in 37 games as Palace finished halfway down the championship in 17th place. In what world were Palace ever going to get promoted with this washed up donkey leading the line? Or at least that's what they thought. 1 year later, Murray just scored 30 league goals. Palace got promoted through the playoffs, and all the doubters who wrote him off as a fat lump with body odour sure as hell looked pretty stupid then. Everton, Michael Keane. When Michael Keane first arrived at Everton for 30 million quid in the summer 2017, the fans were essentially frothing at the mouth, enraged at how the club had been so blindingly stupid to pay such a big fee for a walking defensive headache. His first season was unmitigated absolute disaster. He's bounced back somewhat since, and yeah, while things aren't going particularly great at Everton right now, he's in the England squad, so he must be doing something right. Leicester, Jamie Vardy. If you told Leicester fans after Jamie Vardy's first season at the club back in 2012 that he'd end up scoring 112 goals for them, embark on an 11-game goal-scoring run in the top flight, lift the Premier League, score in the Champions League, they'd honestly have thought you were borderline insane. When Vardy first arrived from Fleetwood Town for 1 million quid back in May 2012, he was out of his depth. He struggled to adapt to the Championship, scored 5 goals all bastard season, and was nearly spat out to Sheffield Wednesday. When Leicester heard they were forking out £1 million for a non-league player, they almost had a collective stroke. For Christ's sake, he had all the upper body muscle of a goddamn cheese string, and let's be honest, looked as though he was the type of guy to spend his Tuesday evenings sitting in eating dog food out of the tin.
Leicester have signed non-league striker Jamie Vardy for £1 million. What has football come to? Jesus Christ, I don't think he could cut it in the Championship. His highest level has been the Conference, and he's 25. Seriously, £1 million for this guy? What? A joke. If things continue this way, the only thing we are going to win this season is the biggest laughing stock in the Championship. Seems to bang them in for fun, but £1 million is just ridiculous for a non-league player. 1 million? Is this a joke? He's not even a league player. If he was 17, then maybe worth a gamble, but at 25, £1.5 million is too much of a gamble, considering we could get drink water for under £1 million.
Well, Look at that. How very embarrassing for all of you. Liverpool Jordan Henderson. Well, we all remember what everyone thought of Jordan Henderson back in 2011 when he traded Sunderland for Liverpool on a £20 million deal. His performances were poor. He looked every inch the archetypal overpriced English flop, a commodity Liverpool were making a specialty at the club. For Christ's sake, even Brendan Rodgers wanted to flog him to Fulham within 5 minutes of arriving. Thankfully he didn't, and Henderson turned it around, was awarded the captaincy, and now lads, where once he was viewed as the English Christian Poulsen, with all the authority midfield as a wet postage stamp, he's now a Champions League winning captain. Christ above, what a turnaround. Man City, Raheem Sterling. But I could have gone for John Stones, a two-time Premier League champion, who most football fans wrote off as a walking disaster in defence during that first season. For Christ's sake, after that display against Leicester away, where Jamie Vardy turned him into a wet salad, half the British media were effectively telling Stones to retire out of sheer goddamn embarrassment. He's turned it around, but I'm going to go for Raheem Sterling. Nobody was convinced when he first arrived. For 50 million quid, City fans were expecting a lot more than 6 league goals in his first season. His god-awful performances Euro 2016 the following summer tipped the scales entirely. Half the country viewed him as nothing more than a wet blanket, with all the end product of Andros Townsend. Well, look at him now, lads. Man United, David De Gea. Yes, it's true that Nemanja and Patrice Evra, two Manchester United defensive legends, got off to a nightmare start when they first arrived in January 2006, helped the club to an embarrassing defeat in the derby. If United fans had their way, they'd have been chucked in a box and booted off a bridge. I'm going to go for David De Gea though. After some wretched displays before Christmas 2011, including the shipping of 6 at home in the derby, howlers against West Brom and Blackburn, one of which effectively cost the club the league title, and he was eventually dropped for Anders Lindegaard. Not a great start for a £90 million arrival from Atletico Madrid.
31st of the 12th, 2011. The day I lost all faith in David De Gea. Lindegaard is by far the better keeper.
Oh, lads. Newcastle, Fabrizio Coloccini. I'm going to go for Fabrizio Coloccini, a lad who was essentially a defensive migraine when he arrived from Deportivo La Coruña in the summer of 2008. He looked absolutely terrible, cocking up each and every week as Colo the Clown helped Newcastle to a first relegation in over 2 decades. For Christ's sake, he was even dropped for a pivotal trip to Stoke in April. When David Edgar is viewed as a more trustworthy and safe pair of feet than you, that's when you know your career is lying face down in a ditch. But no, he bounced back, secured promotion, went on to captain the club to 5th place 3 years later, wound up in the Europa League quarter-final and was even compared to Bobby Moore. Norwich, David Bentley. Let's be honest, when David Bentley first arrived at Norwich, he was written off as some piece of Arsenal deadwood that seemed to love himself a little bit too much. How were Norwich going to survive in the 04-05 season with this fella on the goddamn wing? But no, he scored a couple of goals, played 28 games, and despite his young age and annoying personality, he actually turned out to be a pretty decent loan signing. Southampton, Peter Crouch. Peter Crouch was an underwhelming signing for Southampton back in the summer 2004. Here was a club who'd spent that summer being teased with a return for old boy Alan Shearer. Yes, I know it was a transfer rumour no doubt dreamt up by someone who just swigged too much Calpol that morning, but still, to have that ripped away and then to have the human lamppost that was Peter Crouch thrust upon them, plucked from the Aston Villa bench. He only made 1 start for Southampton by December. What a god-awful signing, except that he wasn't. Once he was given a chance, he sprung to life, scored 16 goals in all competitions, and earned himself a move to the champions of Europe. Sheffield United, Ched Evans. Yeah, controversial one I know. Leaving aside the obvious court case, which is essentially going to define this man's career, he initially turned out a fantastic signing his first spell at the Blades. He had a shaky start. 4 goals in 33 championship games is not a great return for a striker. A fellow who couldn't cut it in a Man City strike force who looked allergic to goals. It was not promising. 9 league goals followed the following season before exploding into life with 35. Yes, 35 goals in his 3rd season at Bramall Lane. And then of course the unpleasantness. Tottenham, Gareth Bale. I'm going to go for Gareth Bale. Let's not forget, he struggled massively when he traded Southampton for Spurs as a teenager back in 2007. It took him over 2 years and 20 odd games to win a goddamn match for the club. Left to rot on a bench as a backup left back and viewed as nothing more than a mousy-haired curse. He was nearly flogged to the likes of Birmingham and Nottingham Forest for 3 million quid. If you told fans then that within 4 years he'd be sold for close to £100 million to arguably the biggest club on the planet, again, they'd have assumed you just inhaled a carton of glue. Watford, Andre Gray. Yeah, I'm really struggling to find one for Watford, lads. I really am. Let's go for Andre Gray, I suppose, although I'm still not totally convinced he's proved anyone wrong. Listen, when he traded Burnley for Watford in a £20 million deal 2 years ago, yeah, it looked a wretched deal. At 5 league goals in his debut season, it was awful. But he did score 9 last season, including crucial winners during the run to the FA Cup final. I don't know. I'm not saying he's worth £20 million, but it's a marginal improvement on that first season, I guess. West Ham, Marco Arnautovic. Yes, the end of Marco Arnautovic's time at West Ham was hilariously bad, but let's not forget, when he was on it, he was the club's best player. Scoring 11 goals in each of his 2 seasons at the club, the Austrian lit it up. When he could be bothered, that is. He was initially written off as a £20 million disgrace when he first arrived, getting sent off for an elbow in August, and following that up with some hideously lethargic displays that contributed to Slaven Bilic getting the boot. Honestly, at that moment, West Ham fans would probably have paid for his goddamn execution, never mind a return to Stoke. But no, Arnautovic soon turned it on, was named Hammer of the Year, and linked with a £50 million move to Man United. Then again, so was John McGinn. Wolves, Adama Traore. Let's be honest, last season Adama Traore was written off as an expensive flop. 1 goal in 36 games for an £80 million club record arrival winger. It's absolutely criminal. But hey, that lad has just scored 2 winning goals at the Etihad last week. Maybe, just maybe, this is where it all turns around for the fella, who possesses the engine of a Lamborghini and the decision making of a dead squirrel.